How's it going, folks? Zamecki here. Anti-Trumper, as you can see. And isn't it amazing what's happening these days? We're living in historic times. The one relative of mine who is a Trumper is not speaking to me. Now, I can understand why. And I feel like a lot of these people have set themselves up to feel very bad now that Trump is not president. And it's irrational, yes. Now, this person's very educated, so I was surprised in the first place that they would ever support Trump. But a lot of these people now are going through an emotional, nightmarish crash. Isn't that amazing what people will have to go through when they set themselves up? What they really should have been prepared for is to be able to say, well, we didn't get him this time, but we'll get him next time. Thanks for working so hard on this campaign, all the volunteers, supporters, and voters, and everybody who helped us. We'll get him next time. To be a good sport when you lose is a valuable part of competition. And in my opinion, anytime you cannot handle losing, you really shouldn't play. Trump and his team literally said the game was rigged before it even got started. Now, to me, that sent an instant message that said, yes, he's going to be involved in some funny business during and after this election. No questions asked there. It's pretty easy to predict that. With his attitude, but also his actions, going out and telling people that the election is bad to begin with before it even gets started, that really does throw a wrench in the works of the whole thing, doesn't it? And we're that kind of country that loves our democracy and our elections and our voting, and we take it very seriously. Hey, just look at the news whenever somebody's upset because somebody stole their political campaign sign out of their front yard. And I always thought, well, first of all, you're kind of privileged to be able to put it in your front yard, aren't you? A lot of people live in apartments and other situations in which they cannot, for some reason, put out a political campaign sign at all. So consider yourself a little bit privileged there. But when you think about it, after January 6th, in which we get to find out the true nature of the people among us who do things like that and have that kind of attitude, and find out a lot of them live in nice houses with well-manicured lawns. Some of them are CEOs at jobs that pay very nicely. Some of them are government employees. It is just so ironic that they would get involved in something so harebrained as this election fraud conspiracy to go along with the post-election whining, which is normally thought of as something that you don't want to get involved with. It makes you look bad. It's amazing what the Republican Party is willing to do to make themselves look really, really bad these days. And Democrats don't have to do anything at all to contribute to that. It's the same thing as Operation Just Let Them Speak. It works so well. The Republicans are so reliable for this. They're dividing themselves over Trump. My relative said his conscience was clear when he voted for Trump, and indicated also that if Trump had not won the nomination, that if Ted Cruz had won, he would have voted for Ted Cruz. He felt strongly that both of them were good candidates. After January 6th, I've not heard back from this person. I don't expect to. And just imagine what kind of crow they're having to eat. A big, huge plate full of crow. Eating crow, for those young people among us, was a way of saying this is something they regret and have to take back, at least in their own mind, even if they don't want to admit it. I don't want to act like this is schadenfreude, okay? Sadism, watching people having an emotional distress because of their mistakes. But let's face it, the Trumpers have earned it. Trump has earned it. The whole Trump team, the Trump administration. They wanted and got entire families incarcerated without due process. And that's still happening thanks to Trump. So, in my opinion, that absolutely justifies pointing out what they've done wrong in other areas, but especially with regards to the election. This is a democratic republic, and we're not supposed to have people coming in here and messing with our election. To tell people that it's rigged before it happens, you're automatically going to get some of your own people not wanting to vote at all. Some of those people who attacked the Capitol building on January 6th apparently did not vote. Isn't that funny? Anyway, Biden's our president now, and I'm glad we finally have a Democrat in the White House again. As I've said in the past, I'm not a big fan of Biden in the first place, but honestly, there's no comparison between him and Trump. Biden is a normal, decent human being, and that's so much better than what we can say about Trump ever. It's mind-blowing, the comparison. And Biden's already started off with a lot of executive orders, and I applaud his effort to reverse some of the damage done by Trump. Of course, for 4 years, a lot of people suffered unnecessarily, and that damage in many cases cannot be rectified at all. The problems remain, and people died because of Trump's policies. And on January 6th, Trump incited an attack which cost 5 lives. I don't see how the Republican Party can possibly come down from that activity in which they are completely out of their minds for a while. And imagine if the Democrats had done that. Imagine if anybody other than Trump's fans had physically attacked the Capitol building or the Supreme Court or the White House. I think the Republicans would never stop screaming bloody murder. So for us to see them trying to squirm afterwards, after they did it, that's just funny. I'm sorry, it's just history in the making all around us all the time. Now, on the issue of Biden, he was inaugurated, and during the inauguration there was a lot of religion, and I found that to be typical, predictable, not surprising, but still quite nauseating. It doesn't help that it's the Democrats doing that, not the Republicans. Both sides do it. That's one thing they have in common. That and their love of war, apparently. See, I'm not a Democrat, but obviously we needed somebody like Biden to come in and be a fire extinguisher on it all. I use that as an analogy. When there's a fire, your house is on fire, use a fire extinguisher, knowing that it's going to make a mess as well. Big, nasty, white, foamy, powdery mess that takes some time to clean up. But everything that happens with that fire extinguisher in an effort to put out the fire is preferable to the fire and the damage it causes. Right? I think that's going to be the case. It's just common sense. We needed a president who is not only able to, but willing to spend a considerable portion of his presidency trying to reverse the damage done by the previous president. And that's going to be a part of his legacy. Biden's legacy as president will be, in my opinion, at least 50% fire extinguisher. Making the problems go away systematically one by one as best he can, cleaning up the mess. And I think we should also give a collective apology to the rest of the world. Sorry about the last 4 years. We've had a crazy person for a president. This is part of the pitfalls of giving the people some kind of control with democracy. I'm sorry, I'm also going to knock democracy a little bit here. We need a system in which people who are qualified are the only ones who can possibly lead. Because the people who are not qualified, those who are interested in doing something nefarious instead, in my opinion, should be disqualified from running. In my opinion, all of those rioters from January 6th who attacked the Capitol building, they should be prosecuted and convicted and sent right to Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay. That's what it's for. It's not being used very much these days. It hasn't for years. But it has the capacity to be used a great deal more to hold a whole lot more people. Now, Republicans have griped about Biden eliminating jobs with this canceling of the pipeline project. It's the same old complaint about jobs, isn't it? It's just another way for them to complain, not accepting or understanding that some jobs really shouldn't exist. And opening up Gitmo to a few thousand terrorists all of a sudden would create some new jobs. So I think that would be a great idea. When Trump got elected, a couple of celebrities got up and said, let's give him a chance. Now that Biden is president, I'm sure that a lot of people will be happy with his presidency if they will just give him a chance. And I'm trying to pay attention to what he's doing with these executive orders. They're coming very fast. But as far as I can tell, there really isn't much that Republicans can complain about in regards to those orders. I mean, reestablishing diplomatic ties with countries we have problems with is a good move, in my opinion. Stopping the border wall, of course, they're going to disagree with us on that every time. It is a preposterous idea that needs to end. And as you can see, I also support the abolition of ICE. And also, at the same time, I think it should be dissected and investigated thoroughly for crimes they've committed. Crimes against humanity and human rights abuses. And I think we're going to get a lot closer to justice in these areas with a Democrat in the White House. Did you notice also, when the Republicans have control over government, as they have in the last few years, that's when they're at their angriest. They weren't so angry when Bill Clinton and Barack Obama were president, as they have been in the last 4 years. They were very angry under Bush Jr., but Trump really got them angry. I think that's part of the disinformation campaign and part of the incitement is Trump simply stirring up anger unnecessarily where it just isn't needed and it isn't helpful at all for his own purposes. And any intelligent, educated person ought to be able to see this a mile away. But at the same time, I believe our country has let down a lot of students with poor education. The quality of our education is obviously grossly inferior to so many other countries that do it better. Look at the product. We have a population that is around about 50% really, really misguided. I took business law in high school. It was very helpful, but it was also quite incomplete. I took government as well. Incomplete. We really need to tell people that there is a very strong need for consequences for lying. Incitement to insurrection is actually quite a simple concept. And it's amazing how anybody could think that Trump had nothing to do with this. It's just laughable. We've got the video and the audio of him up there at a podium, again, inciting violence. He called for violence at his political campaign rallies, before, during, and probably in the future, now that he's not president, but during his presidency, he campaigned all throughout his presidency. And at his campaign rallies, he called for violence. Remember? And he got it. I remember. Thanks for watching. And notice again, no commercials on my videos. Rock on. I'm about to turn Black Panther. Don't let Donald Trump win, that nigga cancer. You too rich, he got the